Hi, and welcome to the last video in our Mission 7 of Control and Coordination. In this video, we're going to be talking about the endocrine system. Just to give you an overview of the endocrine system, we look at this system as interacting with the nervous system to control and coordinate the activities in our body. So our nerves can send impulses and do things, but a lot of the stuff that it controls is through the use of these hormones, these chemicals that are found in these glands that are all throughout our body. These hormones then are chemical messengers secreted by the cells into the fluid, and they will do their action on different cells depending on where you are. Some of the things they do are controlling reproduction, growth and development, your blood nutrient balance, the metabolism of your cells, using the food that you've eaten and converting that into energy, usable energy, and then also using or starting the process of defense with our immune system. Okay, this is just an overview of how these two systems work. So the nervous system uses action potentials and neurotransmitters, remember? That acetylcholine is one of the ones we talked about with muscles. It provides very immediate responses and short-term responses. Your nervous system is working quickly, acts at specific locations, at the axon to bring signals all the way across. So short distances, you're mostly getting with your nervous system. The endocrine system uses hormones that are released in the blood. They involve delayed responses, so you may not get a response right away. It takes time for the stimulation to get there and to release the gland and the hormone, or release the hormone. It takes time for the hormone to go travel through the blood to get to the right spot. Also, long-term responses are more with the endocrine system, and it acts at target locations that the hormones diffuse to through the blood, so long distances. But they both work together with both of these, all these different functions, to make sure you regulate, integrate, and coordinate your body's functions. This shows you some specific types of glands. One type is exocrine, which secretes its product directly into the bloodstream or just out into the outside of the gland. These things we've already talked about. They're not hormones that they release, things like sweat. We'll talk about them in the digestive system when we talk about saliva, but they go through ducts and exit through the body surfaces. Endocrine glands are different in that they are secreting internally. They will release hormones into the surrounding tissue fluid, kind of like in blood. And they don't have these ducts, which are little tubes. They just dump it all in there. Some other structures that aren't necessarily glands, but also produce other key hormones are your hypothalamus, your pancreas, the gonads, and the placenta will also secrete substances that are involved in the endocrine system. Finally, this is just a refresher of the hormones and how they work as negative feedback mechanism. Remember, a negative feedback is where you have something stimulating the nerves, and it will send a message to the control center or wherever the receptor, and cause a response to happen that will put you back in balance if you're out of balance. So no matter if you're too high or too low, you have a deviation and you go back. That's what the negative. Remember, the positive one is where you have a deviation and you continue doing that until it's completely resolved. But with negative, you're always doing this back and forth, back and forth. You're going to do a game with this system that will show you kind of how that works in a real system. There's 3 different ways that you can cause these hormones to be, that your body will release these hormones. We're not going to go into detail on that, but basically you can either release it in the blood or cause a change in the blood. There can be a stimulus from another nerve that would release a hormone, or another hormone can act on a gland to release a second hormone. So there's 3 different ways, again, just as a review. I'm not going to go into detail on that. No matter what kind of stimulus is there, though, the hormone won't work unless it's going to actually fit into the specific receptor of a specific cell. Remember, we talked about the neurotransmitter going across the synapse in how when we looked at nerve transmission, and I mentioned to you it's like a lock and a key. The key is like the hormone, and the receptor is like the lock. So it has to be very specific, binding to it like a puzzle piece before it will actually work. This receptor doesn't fit this hormone, so the hormone will not work on this cell. It will only work on the one that has the receptor that fits it. So let's look now at the different glands in your body. And you're going to do an activity later that will look at the different hormones. So we're not going to cover those specific ones here. First, we have the thymus gland, and it is located near the sternum, right above your heart. It secretes thymopoietin, which is involved in creating these other hormones from the thymus gland, and these help develop the cells of the immune system. This gland is it's the largest it will be in children, and as you age, it gets smaller and smaller because you're developing more and more of your immune system, so you don't necessarily need it as much as you get older. So this will start getting smaller as you get older and not working as much. The thyroid gland is here in your neck. So right in here, you have the thyroid gland. It actually has two different halves. It's kind of shaped like a butterfly. It secretes calcitonin, which regulates the calcium levels in your blood, and also thyroid hormones, which regulate your metabolism and your body temperature. If you have too low of these hormones, then you're always cold and your metabolism is really slow. Too much, and you tend to be warm a lot, hot, and then your metabolism is very fast. The next gland is the adrenal gland. It sits right on top of each kidney. The outer part of it is called the cortex, and it will secrete glucocorticosteroids. And the inner part of it is called the medulla, and it secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine. So in stressful situations, your adrenal gland is going to crank out some adrenal hormones, the epinephrine, that will allow you to respond appropriately to the situation, part of that fight or flight system we talked about earlier. To help with that, the glucocorticosteroids are used for breaking down glucose so that you can generate energy to do the fight or flight. The pancreas, we'll talk about in the digestive system too, but it also has an endocrine function that we're going to focus on here. It secretes insulin and glucagon that will help control your blood glucose levels. These are very important that you maintain these properly. So the two hormones here are working constantly to maintain proper blood glucose levels. If you have too much glucose in your blood, the insulin will pull it into the cells. And if you don't have enough, then glucagon will work to get the extra stored glucose out of your liver and put it into your blood. Then we have the hormones of the sexual hormones. The testes secrete testosterone, which is involved in maturation of the reproductive organs and the secondary sex characteristics of males. And then in females, you have ovaries, which are the glands that secrete estrogen and progesterone, cause the sex organs to mature, and also the secondary sex characteristics of females, and regulate the menstrual cycle and pregnancy. So these are an overview of the endocrine glands that you have in your body. Then we also have endocrine glands of the brain. So you have 3 boxes to drag. The hypothalamus, remember, is this area of the brain. This is the thalamus, this is the hypothalamus, and it is called the master gland because it controls so many other things in the body, such as your brainstem, controls the brainstem, the spinal cord, the center of emotional response, regulates body temperature, food intake, your thirst, and your pituitary gland right here is controlled by hormones released by the hypothalamus and also many other glands. So it's very, very important in the control of lots of different things in your body. The pituitary gland is this little one right here, sits at the base of your brain. The front part of it has the front and back, anterior, posterior. The anterior portion of it secretes all these different hormones: thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, growth hormone, and many others. The main one is probably that you've heard of is growth hormone. So as you're growing, your pituitary gland is what's allowing you to get bigger, stronger, longer, whatever. The back portion secretes a couple of hormones that regulate water retention. So vasopressin regulates if you need to store water or get rid of extra water, and then also produces a hormone called oxytocin, which in females, excuse me, will regulate the release of breast milk and also labor contractions during pregnancy. Then the last one here is the pineal gland. It's right here in the brain, right kind of in the deep within the cerebrum and right above the cerebellum. It secretes a hormone called melatonin, which regulates your sleep and wake cycles. And you're going to be using this in the game that you play later. You'll be reading it using that specific hormone. And this is based on the light that you see. As the light gets dimmer and it gets darker, then you will release more melatonin, and that's what keeps you asleep. And as the light comes on, either through sunlight or you start turning lights on, or you're watching TV or watching the computer and all that stuff, all of that light can stimulate your pineal gland and stop making melatonin to wake you up. That's why it's important not to have bright light right before you go to bed, because then it takes longer for your brain to kind of shut down and secrete melatonin so that you can go to sleep. So the sooner, if you want to go to bed around 10 o'clock, then start getting a dim room and not having bright lights before that. All right, that is the end of this video on the endocrine system. And so go ahead and do your vocabulary after this, and you can proceed with the end of Mission 7.